So welcome everybody to this latest GCSE video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be working through the AQA High GCSE November 2019 paper 1, which is the non-calculator paper. So let's get started on this AQA November 2019 High GCSE paper 1 non-calculator. So let's start by looking at question 1. So the first question says circle the calculation that decreases 250 by 15%. Now with these multiple choice questions there will always be obviously one correct answer, but the other three options will be the most common misconceptions or the common mistakes that most students make to give you that area of doubt. So here, looking at this, let's have a look. So remember, the key thing to remember with percentage decrease is that you always start with 100%, and here we're taking away 15%, which leaves us with 85%. So for this, what we need to do is find the multiple of converting that into a decimal, which is 0.85, and then we are multiplying because we want the amount. And here, because we're going from old to new, that this way is where we're multiplying. To go in the opposite direction, so i.e. reverse percentages, that is when we are dividing. So the correct answer for this is going to be our third option. Now for question 2, it says solve 3x equals 2x, and again, most common mistakes that people make is then going through these four options. So here we've got 3x equals 2x. Now ultimately we want to find out what x is, so what we need to do is take the two things away. So if we take this to this side, then what we end up then is 3x minus 2x equals 0. 3x take away 2x is just single x, so x equals 0. Now another way of doing this is to substitute the numbers in, so you can substitute x equals minus 1, x equals 0, x equals 2/3, and x equals 3 over 2 to work out. But again, the most error that most people make is going through this, which equals, and then they think 2x over 2x, which is fine because then that equals 1. This is going to equal 3 over 2x, and then it just gets a little bit messy in terms of working through these. So again, what you want to try and do is try and think simple, and that's one of the areas of where most people get this particular question incorrect. Moving on to question 3, it says A is at position of 2, 13, and B is at 10, 1. Circle the midpoint between A and B. Now to work out the midpoint, what we need to do is just simply add the two x ordinates. So here we've got 2 plus 10, and we divide that by 2, which gives us 6. And then we do the same with the y ordinate, so I've got 13 plus 1 divided by 2, which equals 7. And there we go. So the coordinate I'm looking for then is going to be 6, 7, which is this third option. Then for question 4, now for this, most people get this wrong because obviously they think, oh, this is just going to be 2x to the 4, which is incorrect. So what we need to remember to do is that we multiply the base number of the coefficient of x, which is the 2, and raise that to the power of 4 as well. So I've got 2 to the power of 4, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is going to equal 16, and then I've got x to the power of 4, which means that the fourth option is our correct answer. Now moving on to question 5a, it says here are two triangles P and Q, and the question is saying here is a statement, a transformation that maps P to Q is a reflection in the line of x equals minus 1. And the question says make one criticism of this statement. Now there's several things that we can do. Now in terms of x equals 1, well, x equals 1 is this line here, which you can see that if it was a reflection, then those triangles would be round about here. So we can see that that's definitely wrong. So saying something along those lines, so for example, we can say that the wrong line has been given. We can also say that for the given reflection line, the image would be in the second quadrant, and so again we could do the sketch, so if it was correct. So basically explaining why this statement here is incorrect. You can also say that the given line is a vertical line when clearly we can see the reflection is a horizontal line. You could also go about giving the actual correct reflection line. So you could say that the correct, well, let's start off by saying that the wrong line has been given, line of reflection has been given, and that would suffice the 1 mark. You could also say the correct line is actually going to be y equals minus 1. Just go back to that. And you can also go about giving correct coordinates of where the reflection line should be, where the coordinates should be, or where this x equals 1 gives you the incorrect values of where it could be. So anything along, there's lots of scope of getting the 1 mark for that particular question. So here, moving on to 5b, it says here are two shapes C and D. Here is a statement: the transformation that maps C to D is a rotation through 90 degrees anti-clockwise. And again, it's asking us to give one statement that is incorrect. So for this, again, several options you could have for this. So here we can see that this is going to be a rotation. So again, where there's no mention, so you could say that there's no mention of a center of rotation. So that would be absolutely fine, because when you're rotating, not only have you got to give an angle, you've also got to give a direction, you've also got to give a center of rotation, particularly when it's on there. But anything along the lines of that, it should be around about 0 or O in this case. Now there is no center. It should be around a point. It's not given, it doesn't give the coordinates. It's 270 degrees clockwise about O. Rotation through 90 degrees clockwise through O. It's a reflection anti-clockwise with center O. It's not reflected on a point. Doesn't say which line you are turning around, and anything along those lines would be absolutely fine to give you the mark again. Now for question 6a, here it's saying that geometric progression starts for 16. So again, what we need to do is find what the ratio is. So to find R, we just divide two consecutive terms together, so it's 6 over 4, which equals 4. So what we then need to do is just multiply the 16 by 4, which gives us our correct answer of 64. Now for 6b, the Fibonacci type sequence starts 3 minus 8. The sequence is continued by adding the previous two terms. Work out the next two terms. So for this term, what we need to do is add the previous two terms, which in this case is 3 plus minus 8, which is minus 5. And then for the next term, what we then need to do is add our previous two terms, which is minus 8 plus minus 5, which then gives us our correct answer of minus 13. So moving on to question 7. So here we've got that given that A times 60 equals B, work out the value of 4B over A. So what we need to do is replace the B with A times 60, which is also known as 60A. So if I then substitute that in for that, so I've got 4 lots of 60A over A. And then what we then do, that then becomes 240A over A. The A's then cancel, giving me my final answer of 240. Then working up with, moving on to question 8. So question 8 says write 27 times 3 squared to the power of 7 as a single power of 3. So this is working with indices. So the first thing I need to do is convert 27 as a power of 3. So 3 to the power of 3 gives me 27 multiplied. Now when you've got brackets, you multiply the powers. So I've got 3 to the power of 14, and then when I'm multiplying, all I then need to do is add the two powers together, which gives me a final answer of 3 to the power of 17. Moving on to question 9, it says here are two solids. So here we've got a cylinder with a height of 10 and a radius of 4, and we've got a hemisphere which has got a radius of 6, and it tells us that the volume of the hemisphere is 2/3 pi r cubed. Now in this it says which solid has the greater volume. So what I need to do is work out the volume of each of these. Now I'm going to do the volume here, even though I should do it in the answer box, only because we can see it on the screen. Now for the volume of a cylinder, it's the cross-sectional area, which is a circle, which is pi r squared, and it's multiplied by the height. So that's the formula I'm going to use for this. So the volume here is going to be pi times 4 squared times 10. And again, I'm not using a calculator, so I'm going to leave my answer in terms of pi. So I've got pi times 16 times 10, which gives me a volume of 16 times 10, which is 160 pi. And that's going to be in centimetre cubed. Then working out the volume of a hemisphere, and again I'm going to use the formula that they've given to me. So here I've got that V equals 2/3 times pi times the radius squared, which is 6 cubed. Now here what I've then got to do is I've got 2/3 times pi times 216. And again, if you're not too sure about what 36 times 6 is going to be, because obviously 6 squared times 6, 6 times 6 is 36, and 3 times 6 is 18, plus 3 gives you 216. So that's how I've got that answer. Then from this, what I then need to do is multiply this by 2, which gives me 432, and then divide that by 3. So I've got 3, 4, 3, 2. So again, just working this out. So I've got 1, and then I've got 4, and then I've got 4. So 144. So that's going to be volume equals 144 pi. And again, going back to the question, it says which solid has the greater volume? Well, I'm comparing this volume here to this volume here. So if I just remember 160 over 144. So here the volume of the cylinder, spell it, which I can't, is greater. And again, what's really good is if you can write 160 pi is greater than 144 pi. Just to have your evidence there. But I would strongly recommend that you do have everything I've written in terms of working out written down, because obviously with it being worth 4 marks, you'd get 1 mark, 2 marks maybe for the hemisphere, 1 mark for working out the volume of the cylinder, and then comparing it with your final answer. So moving on to question 10, it says that Saj makes rose pink paint and cherry pink paint. He mixes red paint with white paint as shown, and we've got a ratio. So rose pink is red to white in the ratio of 1 to 2, and cherry pink is red to white 4 to 3. He makes 60 litres of rose pink paint. To this rose pink paint, he adds 80 litres of red paint and 20 litres of white paint. Has he now made cherry pink paint? And we must show our working out. So the first thing we need to do is work out how many litres of the rose paint and the pink paint that he has made. Now there are several ways in which we can answer this particular question. So how I'm going to go through it is, first of all, to work out, have we got enough of the red and white paint? So for this, what we need to do first is work out how much we've got from making 60 litres of rose pink paint. So for this, what we need to do is divide 60 litres in the ratio of 1 to 2. So here, to make the rose pink, what we need to do is we need to do 60 divided by 3, which gives us 20. And then for the red paint, we've got 20 times 1, which is 20. And for the white paint, we've got 20 times 2, which is 40. So this is basically how much paint we've got of the 60 litres of the red and white. Now from this, what we then need to do is we need to add 80 litres of red. So I'm going to add 80 to this, and I'm going to add 28 litres to that. So from this, we've got our red paint totaling up 100 litres and our white paint equaling 40 plus 28, which is 68. Now from this, what I then need to do is, if I just work over here, so this is my red and this is my white, and which I've got 68. I need to see, does this ratio fit in line with this ratio here? So again, what I'm going to do is to divide both by 2, because obviously it's non-calculated, so I've got 34 rather. So let's just change that to a 4. And then I'm going to divide again, so I've got 25, and that's going to be 15 plus 2, which is 17. And then that's my lowest ratio. So in terms of this, what I then want to do is compare this to 4 over 3. Now, does that ratio fit? Well, it's going to be a no, because again, looking at this, if I was to go on to make the cherry paint of totaling of 168 litres, so another, probably a better way of explaining this would be to think, well, okay, this is how many litres we've got. So I've got a total of 168 litres. Now if I did have 168 litres, I'm going to split that in the ratio of 4 to 3. So I've got 168 divided by 7, so that gives me 0, that gives me 2, and that gives me 4. So I'm going to do 4 times 28, which is going to be, and again just working that out, I've got 32 and then 111. 112 rather, and that's how much red paint I'm going to need. And for the white paint, that's going to be 3 times 28. Again, 28 times 3 gives me 4,884 of white paint. And as you can see, that these ratios here, which I've got from how much Saja's got to what I'm needed to make 168 litres, does not compare. So the answer to this question would be a resounding no. So moving on to question 11, which moves on to standard form. And again, this is a non-calculated question. So what I need to do first is I need to split this fraction up. So what I'm working out is 2 over 8 times 10 over 14 over 10 over 9. Now 2 over 8 is going to be a quarter, which is 0.25. And when I'm dividing, I take away the powers, and that's going to give me 10 to the power of 5. Now this in its current form is not in standard form, so what I then need to do is convert it so that it is. So if I increase this number to make it into 2.5, I then need to decrease the power, so that then becomes to a 4. So the correct answer there is 2.5 times 10 to the power of 4. Then moving on to B rather. And so here it says that we've got work out the values of C and D when 6,200.07 is equal to this. Well, from this, what we then need to do is, well, here we've got 6,200 plus 0.07. Now this is going to be this part here. So to convert this number into standard form, that's going to be 6.2 times 10 to the 3. And if I wanted to convert this into standard form, well, that's going to be 7 times 10 to the power of minus 2. And there we've got our answers of the powers of C and D. So here C is going to equal 3 and D is going to equal minus 2. Now looking at question 12, sorry, it says that V is equal to K over H, where K is a constant. Which of these two statements are correct? Now for this, it's going to be that they are, well, it's going to be inverse. V is inversely proportional to H, so it's going to be the second one, and V is directly proportional to 1 over H, so it's the middle two options that we need to then go for. For question 13, it says the nth term of a sequence is n and then bracket n minus 4 over the square root of n plus 3, and the question is asking us to work out the sum of the first and the sixth term. Now sum means basically add. So what I need to do first is I need to work out what the first term is and what the second term is. Now for the first term, n is going to equal 1. For the sixth term, n is going to equal 6. So to work out my first term, all I'm going to do is substitute n equals 1 into that formula. So I've got 1 minus 4 over the square root of 1 plus 3. And working this out, I'm going to end up with minus 3 over the square root of 4, which then leaves me with minus 3 over 2. Now for the sixth term, just do that in a different colour. I'm going to substitute n equals 6, so I've got 6 and then 6 minus 4 over the square root of 6 plus 3. Now that's going to leave me with 6 times 2, which is 12, over the square root of 9, which is 12 over 3, which equals 4. So what this actually asking me to do is to add minus 3 over 2 plus 4. Now if you want to, you can convert that into a decimal, so it's minus 1.5 plus 4, and that gives me an answer of 2.5. Now moving on to question 14. So question 14 says that 8,300 is equal to 100 times 83. Circle the closest in value of the square root of 8,300. Now for this, what we need to do is square root these two numbers. So the square root of 100 is 10. And the square root of 83 is going to be approximately 9 point something. So multiplying those two numbers, what do we get? It's going to be the square root 90 is going to be the answer for that. For question 15, it says, here is a sketch of a quadrilateral. All lengths are in centimeters. Tick one box for each statement. So here, the quadrilateral is a rectangle. It may be true because it all depends. Looking at this is because we've got the opposite sides are equal. We're not too sure about the interior angles, so it may be true. Or is the quadrilateral a parallelogram? Well, yeah, that's going to be true because we've got equal sides, and regardless of what the interior angles are going to be, that's going to be the same as the opposite angles are going to be the same. And is the quadrilateral a rhombus? That's not going to be true because in a rhombus all the sides need to be the same. And is the quadrilateral a kite? And again, that's not going to be true because adjacent sides need to be equal length. So for it to be a kite, touching sides need to be the same length. So what we need to end up with is something that looks like this, whereas x and 2x are all alternate sides. So looking at question 16, it says, in a box there are some buttons. 45 are large and the rest are small. Some are yellow and the rest are green. The number of small is 5/3 of the number of large, and the number of green is 300% of the number of yellow, and there are 12 small yellow buttons. How many large green buttons are there? So in terms of this, what they're wanting is they are wanting what this number here is going to be. So first things first, let's work out how many buttons there are in total. Now for that, what I need to do is I need to use this rule here. So here, all I need to do is to find out how many there are. Well, I just need to do 45 times 5/3. So I could divide it by 3, then times it by 5, which gives me 75. So that means that the total number of small counters is going to be 75. And by adding those two numbers up, I get the total as being 120. Now from this, I can then use the next line of information, which is that the number of green is 300% the number of yellow. So if I add green to yellow, then we'll have 3 times as much as the yellow. So if there's 120, I divide that by 4 and I get 30. And so if I times this by 30, I get 90, and I times this by 30 and I get 30. So that means that this number here is going to be 30 and that is going to be 90. Now from this, I can then work out how much there are going to be. So here I've got 30 take away 12, which is going to give me 18. And then from this, I can then work out what the small is going to be. So 12 take away from 75 is going to give me 63. And then working out from either of those, I'm going to get 27. And so the answer here is going to be 27. Now I could either write the answer completing my two-way table. As long as I've showed some working out, that should get me marks. But your final answer there is going to be 27. Now the next one in terms of 17, now this involves vectors. So here it says work out the value of a minus 3b when a is 3 minus 3 over 2 minus 3 2 and b is 1 5. So what we need to do here is substitute it in. So I've got minus 3 2 minus 3 lots of 1 minus 5. Now for this, what we need to do is multiply both these two numbers here by 3. So I've got minus 3 2 minus, and then that's going to be 3 times 1, which is 3, 3 times minus 15, which is minus 15. And then all I then need to do is take away those two numbers. So minus 3 take away 3 is minus 6, and 2 take away minus 15 is going to give me 17. So I'm looking for minus 6 17, which is the first answer. And looking at question 18, this is involving solving equations. So firstly, there's a couple of things we could do first, and it all depends on how you work through this. So I would say the most typical thing that most people will do first is expand the brackets on the right hand side. So I get 2x plus 20. Then we take the 3 over. So I've got x plus 15 equals, and it's going to be 6x plus 60. And then it just becomes a double-sided equation. So I take the x over. So I've got 15 equals 5x plus 60. Then take the 60 over to the other side by subtracting. So here I'm going to end up with minus 45 equals 5x. Divide by 5, which gives me x equals minus 9. Then looking at question 19, again this is looking at box plots. So box plot represents the distances run by players in a football match, and we've got team A and team B. Now the first question says, on average, which team players ran further? So we're looking on average, so we're looking for where the median lies. So that's where we want to compare the median. And looking at this, it says that team A on average ran further. A. And our reason for this is because team A median, well, let's actually start by writing what I'm saying. So team A, the median is equal to, and it's 9.8, and team B has got a median of 9.7. So you can either show it by this, or you can just basically say that team A has a higher median value. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Now the next one says that the players in team A ran more consistent distances. How does the box plot show this? Now in terms of consistency, what you're looking for is the length of the box. So you're looking for this length here. And so here you could say, so team A ran more, which is more consistent. How do the box plot show this? Is because the IQR for team A is smaller than team B's. And something along those lines would be absolutely fine. You could say that the box is narrower, and that would be sufficient to give you the marks rather. So let's just write that. So you could say a narrower box, something along those lines. You could even state what the interquartile values are going to be, but as long as that you are stating that the IQR is smaller for team A than team B, or showing this, then that would be fine to get you that single mark. So looking at question 20, the Venn diagram shows information about some houses, and we've got G represents the houses with a garage, and S represents houses with a shed. And it says that a house is chosen at random. The house has a garage, so we're just looking, so we know that it involves this blue circle. And the question is asking us, what is the probability that it has a shed? Well, there's 21 houses in total in that blue circle, and how many of those 21 have a shed? Well, it's going to be 8 of them, so the answer there is 8 over 21. Now the next part says the house does not have a garage, so for this then we are looking at this here, region here, and the question says what's the probability that it does not have a shed? So the total for this is going to be 8 plus 11 plus 4, which is 19, plus 3, which is 23. And how many of those do not have a shed? Well, it's going to be 11 plus 4, which is 15. So the answer there is going to be, it's going to be, now for part B, it says the house does not have a garage. So what we're looking at here is we're going to ignore the blue section. So this is what we're not going to be including. And ignoring these as well. And so from this, it does not have a garage, and the question is asking us what's the probability that it does not have a shed. So from this, we're looking at a total of 15 that are left, and how many of those don't have a shed? Well, it's going to be 4, so the answer there is 4 over 15. Then looking at C, it says show that the probability of a garage and it will not having a garage or a shed is greater than the probability of having a garage or not a shed. Now for this, what you kind of need to do is just draw 2 separate Venn diagrams, and we'll relate it to the actual question of what this actually means. So here we've got G and S, and G and S. And so looking at this, we've got the probability of G and not S. And for this, well, let's just get rid of that P just so not as confusing. And for this one, we've got G or not S. Now, when you're looking at now I would always recommend that you shade the bits in separately. So for this first one of G and not S, so what we're wanting is if I shade the G, all of G, and then shade all of S. Now the bit that is G and S is the bit that's shaded twice, so that's this bit here. Now, because we're not wanting that bit, what I then need to do is work out what everything else that isn't part of that shaded purple area, whatever call it you want to look at it. So if I look back to this, and let's just get rid of that shading here. So it's everything apart from the 8. So now looking at this, we've got a total of 36. So that's going to be 8 take away 36, which is 28. So that's going to be 28 over 36, which then simplifies to give me 14 over 18, which is 7 over 9. Now in terms of this next part, so G or, now all means basically the bits that we're just shading in. So this is the G, not S is all of everything that is not S, which is all of that area there. So what I then need to do is work out the probability of this. So everything that is shaded, so it's everything apart from the 11. So it's going to be 36. So the probability of this is going to be 36 take away 11, which is 25 over 36. I've got 25 over 36. And again, just comparing these two rather than simplifying it, I can see that 28 over 36 is greater than 25 over 36, and that there would be enough for the 2 marks. Now the next question then says work out the values of 0.7048 recurring take away minus 1, take away minus 0.01. Now for this, in terms of our options, is going to be our last one here. So all we're doing is taking away one of these, so that then turns into a 3, and then we can then go from there in terms of the 8, 4, and that's then continued from there. So then moving on to question 21, it says work out the value of 0.7048 recurring, take away 0.001. Now for this, I would probably recommend that you start off by, if you're not too sure what this is straight away, then I would just simply just do the subtraction. 0, 0, 1, and then all of these are going to be zeros. So taking away these two, what do we get? We get 8, 4, 8, and that's just going to continue. And then we've got 3, and then 0, 0, 0, so that should be a 7. And 7, 0 there. And so from this, it's going to be 8, 4 is just going to be recurring, so it's our last option there. Moving on to question 22, it says that, well, let's just zoom out for this one so we can fit it all in. So the question's given us our points, and the question is asking us to work out the equation of L in the form of y equals mx plus c. Now the first thing we need to do is work out the gradient. Now the gradient of these two lines are parallel, so to work out the gradient, what I then need to use is I need to use the formula of this, or I could create my little triangle to work out the gradient of this. Now depending on what you've used, you can either use this formula for these coordinates, or you can do this, which is not a problem. So here the horizontal distance is going to be 2, because that's the difference between 6 and 4, and the distance is going to be 10. So the gradient here is going to be 10 over 2, which is 5. So this is my m value. The next thing I then need to do is to work out where it's going to cross the y-axis to work out what c is. Now again, you could either use the formula, depending on if you've been taught this, you can either use the formula of y minus y1 mx minus x1. We know that m is equal to 5. I can substitute that in. And for x1 and y1, all I've got to do is use those coordinates. So x1 is going to be equal to minus 3, and y1 is going to be equal to positive 10, and then you can just rearrange to get it. Now if you've not been taught that formula, do not worry. So what I know is I've got y equals 5x plus c, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make x equal to minus 3 and y equal to 10. So substituting this in, I get 10 equals, and it's going to be minus 15 plus c, and doing a bit of rearranging, I get c equals 25. So now with those two components, I can write the equation of the line, which is y equals 5x plus 25, and there is my final answer. Then for question 23a, it's talking about factorising. Now again, this can be done in several ways. You can either do it by inspection, or you can use a magic number way in which that your two answers you should have is 5x minus 4 and x plus 2. Now if you've written it the other way around, that's absolutely fine because just multiplying the order doesn't make a difference. But again, you just get marks for each of the brackets to get through that. So whichever way you do it, as long as you come to that answer, then that's going to be fine. If you're not sure about how to factorize quadratics when the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1, then I have got a video and I'll put that in there. For question 23b, it says simplify fully. So what we need to do is we need to factorize both the top and the bottom. Now typically this may often use what we've done above, but this is a completely separate question. So factorising x squared plus 9x plus 14. So I'm looking for two numbers that add together to give me 9, multiply together to give me 14. So that's going to be 7 and 2, and they're both going to be pluses. For x squared minus 4, well this is going to be a dots question, the difference of two squares. So that's going to be x to get x squared, and what do you need to square to get 4? That's going to be 2, so I've got a plus and a minus. Again, order doesn't matter. So from this, what I've got is I've got x plus 7, x plus 2 over x plus 2, x minus 2, and you can see that the x plus 2's are going to cancel, leaving me with an answer of x over 7, x minus 2 is my final answer. Then moving on to question 24, so this is looking at surds, and the question saying give your to work out what the square root of 18 minus 28 over square root of 50, give your answer where we've rationalised the denominator of a square root of something over something. So for this what we need to do is simplify root 18. Now root 18 can be simplified as do 9 times square root of 2, so that's going to be 3 root 2. So far what I've got is I can change this to 3 root 2. Now in terms of 28 over root 50, well that 28 I can't do anything with that, but I can do something with the root 50, so that's going to be 25 times root 2, which gives me 28 over 5 root 2. So this then simplifies to be 20 over 5 root 2. And those two things there are being subtracted, not multiplied, so let's just get rid of that. And there we go. Now what I want to try and do is I need to try and have a common denominator. So for this what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this by 5 root 2. Now if I multiply that by 5 root 2, just multiply the outside number, so 5 times 3 gives me 15, and then root 2 times root 2 gives me root 4, and I can divide that then by 5 root 2, because obviously if I work this out I'm going to end up with 3 root 2. Now from this I've then got 28 minus 5 root 2. Now because I've got a common denominator, all I can then do is write that as a single fraction, like so. Now from this, again, we now need to rationalise denominator, but before I do that, let's just simplify this. So this then becomes 15 times 2, which is 30, and 30 take away 28 is going to give me 2, so I've got 2 over 5 root 2. Now what I now want to do is rationalise the denominator, so I'm going to multiply this by 5 root 2 over 5 root 2. So then that then becomes 10 root 2 over, and it's going to be 25 over root 4, which then becomes 10 root 2 over 25 times 2, which is 50. And then I can simplify this by dividing both the top and the bottom by 10, which gives me root 2 over 5, and there is my final answer. Now looking at question 25, it says the bag contains 8 balls, 3 are red and 5 are blue. 2 balls are taken from the bag at random without replacement, so we're not putting them back in. So this straight away resembles a tree diagram question. So let's start by quickly drawing our tree. So here we've got red and we've got blue, and we're selecting 2, so I've got another branch, blue. So here we've got 8 in total, so the red is 3 over 8, and that's 5 over 8, and then from this I'm going to end up with 7 because we're not replacing them. And so filling these in, I'm only going to have 2, I'm still going to have 5, I'm going to have 3, and I'm going to have 4. So there I've set it up. So now the question is saying write down the probability that there is at least one red ball still in the bag. Well, for this it's going to be, well, it's going to be certain in terms of this, that regardless of what options you pick, you're always going to be left with a red ball. Now in terms of question B, it says work out the probability that there are at least 2 red balls still in the bag. Well, the only time that there's not going to be 2 red balls left in the bag is excluding this one. So this one's going to take 2 red out. So that's the one that we don't want. Now to work out the probability of that scenario, so we need to do 1 take away 3/8 times 2/7. So it's 1 take away 3 times 2, which is 6, 8 times 7, which is 56, and then taking away those two numbers there, we're going to end up with 50 over 56, which you can simplify to give you 25 over 28. So any of those two answers would be correct to give you the full marks in that particular question. So looking at question 26 is that here are a circle and a sector of the circle. They each have a radius of r, and it tells us that the circumference of the circle is equal to the perimeter of the sector, and work out the size of angle x, given our answer in terms of pi. Now for this, in terms of the circumference of a circle, that's going to be 2 pi r. Now the reason why I'm not using pi times d is because I don't want to use another letter, because obviously d is not involved in the perimeter of the sector. Now for the perimeter of the sector, well, that's going to be equal to theta over 360 times 2 pi r, and then I've got to add the two other lengths, which is r and r, and this will give me an answer of x over 360, and then that's going to be multiplied by 2 pi r plus 2r. And if I neaten that up, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get 2 pi r x over 360 plus 2r. So this and this are going to be equal to each other. So let's start by actually writing that down. So here I've got 2 pi r equals, and it's going to be 2 pi rx over 360 plus 2r. Now for this, what I now want to do is make x the subject. Now one thing I noticed straight away is that each of the three things has an r, so I can cancel the r's out. So then what I'm left with is 2 pi equals 2 pi x over 360 plus 2. Now if I take the 2 over, so all I want to do is make x a subject. So let's see if we can do that. So I've got 2 pi minus 2 equals 2 pi x over 360, and then I've got, take the 360 over to the other side, so I've got 360, 2 pi minus 2 equals 2 pi x, and then take the 2 pi over to the side, which I'll just do over here. So I've got 360, 2 pi minus 2 divided by 2 pi equals x. Now from this, that should be okay, but again what I want to try and do is multiply this out and see if we can simplify. Well, we can simplify straight away because I can divide that by 2, so that gives me 180. So I've got 180 2 pi minus 2 over pi equals x, and then from this I can then expand the bracket, so I've got 360 pi minus 360 over pi equals x, and then I can factorize, so I've got 360 pi minus 1 over pi equals x, and any of those answers would be sufficient for you to get the full mark. So I would say any of those three would get you more the marks for this particular question. Now looking at question 27, it says that curve has the equation of y equals x squared minus 6x plus 17. The turning point of the curve is at a8. By completing square, otherwise work out the value of a. Now for this, what we need to do is use CTS on this. So working that, I set up my bracket, and so I'm going to halve this so that becomes minus 3, and I take away whatever digit is in the bracket squared. So from this I get x minus 3 squared plus 17 minus 9, which gives me x minus 3 squared, and that's going to be plus 8. Now from this, what we then need to do is then use the inverse of the digits. That's going to be positive 3, so a equals 3. Then it says that the turning point of the curve of y equals x squared plus 4x plus b has a y ordinate of 8. Work out the value of b. So for this, again, we're going to use completing the square. So I've got x plus 2 squared plus b minus 2 squared. So I've got x plus 2 squared plus b minus 4. Now this b minus 4 must equal 8. So if that is the case, then just take the 4 over to the other side by adding 4, so b equals 12. Now moving on to question 28, it says work out the value of 100 to the power of minus a half. So here we're looking at the minus means 1 over, so it's 100 to the power of a half, and the half means power to a half means the square root. So that's 1 over square root of 100, which is going to give me 1 over 10. And if you want to give it as 0.1, then that would be absolutely fine as well. So looking at our final question, it says that question 29, which says show the value of 5 sine 30 times cos 30 and 8 tan 30 is an integer. Now for this, it's using the exact values of trig. So what I need to do is write down or remember what each of these are. Now sine 30 is a half, cos 30 is root 3 over 2, and tan 30 is 1 over root 3. Now for this, what we then need to do is then substitute those three values into this calculation. So what I've got is I've got 5 lots of a half times root 3 over 2 times 8 lots of 1 over root 3. Now if I simplify that, what I end up is 5 over 2 times root 3 over 2 times 8 over root 3. Now just doing normal fraction work, I've got 5 times 8, which is 40 root 3, over 2 times 2, which is 4 root 3, and then from this the root 3's cancel, leaving me with 40 divided by 4, which is 10, and that there is my final answer and the end of this paper.